Many writers are surprised to learn that a book launch starts way before your book actually comes out and extends well past your pub date. Whether you already have a collection or chapbook accepted for publication or are planning on submitting one in the future, this episode is for you. Launching a book is an exciting milestone, but it can also be overwhelming, especially if you're managing it all on your own. Bootstrapping your book launch means using your resources creatively and effectively to maximize your reach and impact.
Welcome to the Poetry Lab podcast. The Poetry Lab started 11 years ago to help dedicated, self-taught, and formally trained writers find a place in their community to write, read, learn, and collaborate. We help writers tap into their craft with radical self-compassion, unlike anything you've ever seen in a creative writing classroom before. If you're a creative person trying to establish a writing practice in the real world, this podcast is designed to help you carve out the time, the courage, and the inspiration to keep writing your new shit. Are you ready, poet? Let's get into it.
Welcome, dear listeners, to another episode of the Poetry Lab podcast. I'm Lori Walker, and today we are bootstrapping your book launch because I'd bet you dollars to donuts your publisher ain't going to provide you with a lot of support. But that's okay. You can do this. While there's a lot that goes into a book launch, it's kind of a choose your own adventure deal, allowing you to pick and choose what works with your time, bandwidth, and resources. In this episode, I'm going to cover some of the things that you totally need to do and offer some suggestions on the extras, the optional things that you can add on. I'm also going to share some additional resources at the end, which will be noted in the show notes because, like I said, there's a lot that goes into a book launch. Before I get started, take a second to grab a pen and paper or open the Notes app on your phone because you're going to want to make a to-do list. I'm going to start this episode off with what I'm calling the before stuff. The stuff that you need to do before you have a book coming out, before you submit a book, before you have it actually publish. And if you haven't done these things already, you don't need to kick yourself about it. You can just go ahead and get them done. Like, just get started on it. It's okay. But if you have the time, if you have the ability to do these things, get them done as soon as possible because it'll make your life a lot easier when you do get to the point where you're publishing your book. First part of that is your platform. You need an author website. An author website is like your digital calling card. It is a central hub for your author platform. And we've got an episode of the Poetry Lab podcast where I talk about some of the pieces that are absolutely critical for your website. It is episode 26, and it's called Hello, It's Me, Your Author Website. Another important component of your platform is your email list. Your email list allows you to reach out to people who want to hear about your upcoming publication and anything else you've got going on. And we've got an episode on that too. Danielle hosted episode 14, Getting Started with Your Mailing List, where she goes over a lot of the basics of email lists. And the third piece of the author platform is social media. This is where you grow your community, where you reach out to new people. Yes, we all know that social media can be a toxic time suck, but you can use it intentionally. And you guessed it, we've got an episode on that too. Episode 6, hosted by yours truly, is called Creating Community Through Social Media. And oh my God, please don't judge me too harshly on that episode. It was the first solo show that I had ever recorded, and I was so nervous. But on the other hand, I think that it does show a nice progression in my style of hosting solo episodes. All these episodes are going to be linked in the show notes so that you can easily navigate to them after listening to this episode. Another piece of the before stuff is building literary citizenship. And I was looking back over the script for the social media episode and was really surprised to discover that I didn't beat over listeners' head the concept of building literary citizenship because I think it is so important. What is it? Well, it's recognizing that you are not an artist in a vacuum, that you are part of a larger literary landscape of a bunch of other artists living and dead. And it's engaging with the literary world in a supportive and collaborative way. And you can do that in a variety of ways. If you read a book that you are loving, post about it on social media and tag the author. Get to know other authors, especially those who are at about the same point in their creative career as you. Talk about their wins, introduce them to your audience, see about collaborating on something together, like a workshop or an author chat. Literary citizenship is also liking and commenting on other authors' social media posts. And honestly, you're probably already doing this to a certain extent, so don't freak out. But I mention it because you want to start being more intentional about it and kick it up a notch. And when I say kick it up a notch, I mean don't do this in a transactional or using people way because people can tell when you're doing it for selfish reasons. And I totally hate these buzzwords because I think that they are so overused that they are practically meaningless. But what I mean is be authentic when you post an excited review and seek to foster a genuine connection with other artists. They might not follow you back or reach out to you, but honestly, it's all part of a web and you never know how things are going to shake out in the future. And I think it just creates good energy around yourself and your writing and sends it out into the world. And I think the world needs that good energy. Building literary citizenship takes time. It's not something that you can just throw together in a couple of days. It's something that you need to do over and over again. One other final note on the before step that relates to both your author platform and literary citizenship. I can't stress enough that these are extremely important elements to have in place as soon as possible, like before your book gets accepted. Hell, before you even submit your manuscript. They, that amorphous entity, say that the best time to build your platform is last year, and the second best time to build it is today. So if you haven't already done it, get to it. Why? Because once your book comes out, you need to promote that puppy, and it'll be easier if you already have these pieces in place instead of trying to build them at the same time that you're promoting your book. Plus, if you've been consistent with social media and building your literary citizenship and regularly sending newsletters, you've likely already built a community that will be happy to not only buy, but also promote your book. The final reason for having these pieces done as early as possible, sometimes they help you get that book deal in the first place because they show presses that people will buy your book and that you have a place to promote it. Now you need to plan your launch. Having a plan will help you keep on track when life things unexpectedly happen, and it can help you see when and where you might want to add some extras. So here are some things to consider when planning your launch. Define your goals. What do you want to achieve with your book launch? Are you looking to sell a certain number of copies, build your email list, or gain reviews? Setting clear goals will help you stay focused and measure your success. And I mean, yeah, you want to sell copies of your book, but dig a little deeper than that. Are you wanting to use your book as a springboard to talk about a particular topic that you wrote about, like grief? And, this is also probably tied to your creative career goals. Like, what are you wanting to do with the art that you create? Next up, create a timeline. Map out key activities and milestones leading up to your book launch. This should include tasks like finalizing your manuscript and getting your book cover designed. Your publisher will likely set those deadlines of when you need to have your manuscript completed or handle the book design, but you'll need to be aware of them and you might have to take part somehow in them. And you'll want to add some of those key dates, like when your book goes on pre-order, to your author website or social media bios and tell the people on your newsletter list so that you can start to build buzz, which I'll be talking about momentarily. Use the timeline to keep track of any promotional efforts that you are doing, such as podcasts, readings, cover reveal posts that you want to share on social media, just anything that you want to do so that you can kind of see at an eagle's eye glance what you've got coming up. So that way, if you decide you want to do a guest post, you can figure out when's going to be a good time when you can actually write it. Next thing you want to do is look at your budget. Even with a bootstrap approach, there will be some costs involved. Allocate your budget to essential areas like cover design, if that's something you have to pay for, editing, if that's something you want to pay someone else to help you with, and marketing. Or if you also want to design and give away some special pre-order goodies. And something else to plan is, what are you doing on launch day? Maybe you want to do something low key and solo or with those closest to you, and that's perfect. And maybe you want to do something really big and special, like having a book release party, either in person or virtually. If you're wanting a party of some sort, that will take time and possibly some money, especially if it's in person. In one of my writing groups, we talked about our dreams for getting our book published. And somebody said that they really wanted a cake with their book cover on it. And that's a totally valid dream to have, something to really look forward to, but that takes planning and that takes money. All right, after you have your platform built and your book launch planned, you can start doing some of the fun stuff. Pitch yourself to be on podcasts or on Instagram Lives or to write guest posts. I know this stuff takes time and that you're busy, but it is essential to generate excitement about your book. Pre-order numbers are extremely important because they show ahead of time how much interest there is in your book. And a note of caution about posting on social media. Yes, the pre-order and launch time are critical, but don't only post about buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, or email your list daily about buy my book. Keep up the regular programming to a certain extent. And here are some strategies for building buzz. Do a cover reveal. I have seen some really creative ways of doing this where people will have the cover like covered by a solid color like blue, whatever. And then they'll remove pieces of it in quadrants, like it's a puzzle in reverse where you're removing the pieces. Or you can keep it simple and just be like, hey, here's my book cover. Related to this is a book trailer. I've never done one for a poetry collection and I haven't seen one, but that's not to say that they don't exist for poetry collections. And you know what? If they don't, be a pioneer and create a book trailer anyway. I make book trailers for one of my friend's romance novels, and I do it all in Canva with stock images, quotes pulled from her promotional materials, and the book itself. And then I have her contact information in there at the end. I've got covers for her other books. For her first release, I had some quotes from Advanced Praise. These last about 45 seconds to a minute, but I think that they're a nice multimedia element to add to your promotional efforts. If you have advanced reader copies, you can send those to book bloggers, reviewers, and influencers. You can ask them to read your book and post reviews on launch day. This can help build credibility and visibility. And you need to do this well in advance because these people have lives and other content scheduled ahead of time and will need to fit you in somewhere. So you don't want to be like, hey, can you read this by next week? Another piece that you can add is guest blogging and interviews. You'll want to do some research to find compatible outlets and create a pitch letter that outlines what you want to talk about or write about, and then demonstrates how it will benefit that audience. And you need to start sending these out a few months in advance too. I worked with a different podcast and we'd book out like 6 months in advance. Same thing for guest posts. So don't just do this last minute. Guesting does help you reach new and wider audiences, but it also takes time to write a guest post, and being interviewed on a podcast isn't necessarily for everyone. When your guest posts or podcast episodes start coming out, you'll want to be sure to promote those, keep building that literary citizenship. And you want to make sure that you add those dates into your launch calendar or timeline. Another idea is to reach out to local bookstores or other venues about doing a live reading and a book signing. And I say other venues because sometimes, like bars or coffee shops, will host live events. Or you can plan a virtual reading with some of your other literary besties. Now, with all of these ideas about creating buzz, think about what is in your wheelhouse, what is of interest, what you are capable of doing. If you can and want to do all of these things or have the money in your budget to pay someone to make images or a book trailer for you, great. If you don't want to do something or know that you're too busy to commit to writing guest posts, don't. And I think most people are going to fall into one of two camps, and I want to address both of them directly, right quick. To the people who are so anxiety ridden that the thought of promoting your book fills you with dread, I get it. It's hard to put yourself out there, but you're going to have to do it a little bit to get those books to sell. So challenge yourself to do a couple of things on this list. You are part of a loving community who wants to celebrate with you. So even though it might be scary, it won't be bad. And then to the people who are all gung ho, ready to dive in and do all of these things plus 10 others, I get that too. This is really exciting. But I really strongly encourage you to not overextend yourself or overcommit, especially if you're going the guesting route, because you don't want to blow a deadline for a guest post or turn in a really shitty piece or just ghost a podcast interview because you ran out of time and steam. You have the rest of your life to promote your book. So don't just overload yourself all at once. Now we're up to launch week and launch day. Launch week is your big moment. It's a busy time, but take a few moments to soak it in. You've been working on this for how long? Cheers to you. Here's how to make the most of launch day and launch week. On launch day, you'll want to send out a newsletter telling your audience that the big day is here. You'll need to update your website to that effect as well, and you'll want to post about it on social media. And don't forget all of the thank yous to people who are posting about your book as well, and the thank yous to the people who supported you on this journey. I want to circle back to the launch party. Even if you don't want an in-person party, consider a virtual launch party. You can host it on Zoom so that you can see everybody's faces, or you could do just like a quick Facebook or Instagram live. But take a minute to say, hey, my book is out now. Thank you for your support. Here's where you can buy it if you haven't already done so. And you can read a portion of your book. Or if you want to organize, like kick it up a notch and organize some giveaways, you can do that too. Depending on where and how your book is being distributed, you might be able to set up promotional pricing. And depending on your budget, you can offer some limited time promotions, like an autographed book plate if somebody shows proof of purchase during the launch week or the pre-order period, or whatever period you want to highlight. You can autograph it and mail it to them, and they can stick it in the copy of their book. Or you can like design a keychain or some other kind of swag. And again, this depends on your budget to buy the thing and mail it, but just a couple of things to consider. Or if you don't have a whole lot of money in your budget, but you've got time, you could do like a special Zoom session for the people who ordered your book during the specified period. It'd be kind of like a virtual release party, but they have to buy the book to attend. And you could have it like be a Q&A session about the book or whatever. And I got to say, a large part of launch week is just going to be spent engaging. You'll need to respond to comments and emails and messages from your readers and show your appreciation for their support and encourage them to spread the word about your book. This all circles back to literary citizenship. Your work isn't done once your book is launched, though. And from there, you can do as much or as little as you'd like. At bare minimum, you're going to want to continue promoting your book on your website, email list, and social media. Ideas here include sharing reviews, guest posts you've written, podcasts you've been on, and any media coverage that you receive, and then continuing to pitch to additional outlets. Maybe you want to enter your book in some contests or participate in literary festivals or other author events. Keep an eye out and jump at what strikes you. Maybe you want to go on a book tour. Our lovely Anne-Marie Wells wrote a fantastic 3-part series on building your book tour for the Resource Center. I will, of course, link to that in the show notes. And finally, plan your next steps. You don't necessarily have to dive immediately into your next book, even though everybody is totally going to be asking you what your next book is. But you also just might find yourself ready to get back to work. Give yourself some space to figure that out. It's entirely up to you. And also take time to reflect on how this launch went. How did you feel? What did you like? What would you like to do differently? If you're a data person, look at the data. The important thing is to keep moving forward, whatever that looks like for you. First of all, I want to say that in this episode, I covered the basics. So this episode is full of solid information for bootstrapping your book launch, but there's a ton more. So I want to share some additional resources that might prove useful. One book that I absolutely love is called Before and After the Book Deal by Courtney Mom. There is also Promote Your Book by Eleanor C. Whitney. And BookBub has a lot of really good and free resources for writers to help them plan their book launch. Bootstrapping a book launch can be challenging, but with careful planning and creativity, you can achieve great results. A big hurdle is setting up your author platform and building literary citizenship. And you should do these things as early as possible and be consistent with them throughout the launch process. After that, you need to plan your launch, including your goals, budget, and launch day festivities. Then start creating buzz through social media, guest appearances, and in-person events. Most of launch day and launch week is going to be spent on engagement and celebration. And then finally, it's important to keep the momentum going and plan your next steps. I hope the actionable tips in this episode prove helpful. But remember, they're a starting point, a really solid starting point, but a starting point. And there are a ton of other activities that you can add on to a book launch. And you will find more information about those in the resources that I've highlighted in the show notes. Again, I know a book launch can be uncomfortable, but you can do it. And congratulations on your forthcoming book. If you liked this episode, please give us a like and a follow and help us spread the word about our podcast by texting the link to a few creative friends. You can also find us at thepoetrylab.com/podcast. Again, I'm Lori Walker, and you can find me on Instagram at Lori the Writer or peruse my website at loriwriteswords.com. I am also in the process of setting up a Substack, and I will link to that on my website when it's ready if you want to subscribe. That's all for now. I'll catch you soon at the Poetry Lab.